Welcome back to the Mature Male Podcast. I'm your host, Wes, a psychotherapist helping men mature through timeless wisdom and practical guidance. Today's guest is Stuart Motola. Stuart is a men's relationship coach who offers guys concrete strategies for how to get unstuck in relationship. With over 15 years working with thousands of men on their relationships and growth, Stuart utilizes a unique system that breaks the patterns that keep men tied up in frustrating relationships. Unlike many therapists and couples counselors who can frustrate guys with excessive talking, Stuart focuses on explicit action and reprogramming old relationship patterns. His unique process offers each man a clear and direct roadmap of progress to create lasting positive results. Stuart, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Wes. Great to be here.
So let's start with this concept you call the perfect storm, where the martyr meets the nice guy. And there are three levels of exercise related to these core archetypal wounds that you'll walk us through. But can you start with telling us how many men get trapped in this unhealthy pattern of pivoting onto their partner instead of themselves?
For the guys out there who know they struggle with nice guy syndrome, they'll know. And the question they simply need to ask themselves is, in the relationship, like in that deeper intimacy zone, which for many guys, it's the only place where they, have full openness or allow somebody in fully. Even their guy friends, often they don't allow in fully. Now that's changing. Guys are doing deeper work in men's groups, etc., which is a beautiful thing. But in that deep intimacy zone, he can ask himself this question, do I prioritize her happiness over my own? Do I pay attention to her needs, but not my own? Do I even know what my needs are? Or do I just kind of put that to the side because I'm living this old paradigm, which maybe was handed to you by your father or your grandfather? And this is like a lineage thing that's actually in your system. We often call this ancestral trauma, which is happy wife, happy life. So you assume if you can make her happy, everything's going to be great. But the problem is, then she feels like she's in a relationship, or your partner, they feel like they're in a relationship with a ghost. And of college-educated couples, 90%, the woman initiates the divorce. And the biggest reason she speaks to is he's emotionally checked out, unavailable. Well, what happens when you don't know your wants and needs and you're pivoting off of her instead of on yourself to know where's your anchor? Where's your, solid ground? She needs that from you. But when she doesn't get that, and we can get into masculine, feminine polarity kind of work, there's a sense of absence, emotional absence. And, I often say a man who does not know his emotions, which is very much connected to your wants and needs, does not have a compass in his relationships. You don't have a compass in your relationship to know what you want to create. You have no leadership skills. And now she becomes your compass. And that's a shitstorm. And that's the nice guy. Now, intermingled with that is this masculine heroic programming. Protect her, whether that's like provide for all the finances. I talk with a lot of CEOs and high functioning executives who are like, getting great self-worth, value, results, achievement at work. And then they're like, why can't I get that level of value at home? Why doesn't it work there? Why can't I execute there? And the one thing I say to him up front is, well, the risk is 10 times greater because you're coming home to that bed every night. And she's asking you to operate on a level that you don't have to operate at work. Oh, sure. Yeah. You might have some emotional intelligence at work, to build relationships, but you're doing it for a bottom line, to get the profit, growth, expansion of your company, have things go fluid. Well, when a guy brings the make things go fluid at home, he becomes like a martyr, a false hero. And she sees, we know women have an intuition. And again, I'm speaking here in general for heterosexual couples. That's 98% of what I coach. I have worked with some same-sex couples, and dynamics don't change that much. One's holding the masculine, one's holding the feminine more, et cetera, et cetera. And so that heroic programming, which comes to us from Hollywood and all the superhero Marvel stuff, blah, blah, blah. But it becomes like unconscious. We're not even aware that that's there, that somehow I'm supposed to, protect her, provide. And obviously that's changed so much often a lot of times women are making more money than the guys, but there's still this sense of protection on the physical level. So that hero shows up, the martyr, and he starts taking it on, and he starts taking abuse. And one of my most successful YouTube videos is, does your wife bully you? Another is, are you in relationship with a verbally abusive partner? And so I like to, there is a silent epidemic that's not spoken of, that's buried underneath shame, especially with college educated males, that of domestic, emotional, and verbal abuse. But it doesn't fit the PC narrative, so we're not going to hear much about it. And guys sure as hell don't want you to know what's going on in their home. So when they come to me, it's a one-on-one, it's safer. I even notice in a small group that I run on Tuesdays at noon, a small call, it's been challenging to build up a big group of guys, because when they're at this deep level, when the nice guy and the martyr are creating that perfect storm, they feel so vulnerable. I really honor them for their vulnerability when they reach out for help. But they don't want to be seen in a larger group. And this is part of why we don't hear about this. And when I talk about this, a lot of women say, you're so right. My brother takes so much shit from his wife, the way she treats him, or, my brother-in-law, with my sister. And underneath this, as I believe you mentioned, is some deep core wounds from family of origin. You mentioned trauma. Nice guy and martyr are the labels we give to the behaviors that show up on top to try to deal with those core wounds, whether it's like a nice guy who says, give me approval, when really he just needs communication and connection. And the martyr saying, give me self-worth to show that how I show up is valued. Whereas really what he needs is reciprocity of connection and intimacy.
Yeah, and it seems because the average man isn't trauma informed, usually he's not going to pick up on this consciously. And you have this really interesting concept about how often in this kind of pivoting in these nice guy syndrome versus the martyr that we find is the little boy and little girl kind of operating on a subconscious level. And I'm wondering if you can walk us through how those tend to show up in relationships.
Sure. We've been using the T word, the trauma word. There's so much information out there these days with Instagram, social media on trauma. So a lot of guys actually have a lot of knowledge out there. And I trust that some of your listeners do too. But they have the knowledge, but they don't they don't know how to integrate it, embody it to do the deeper healing work. So yeah, when we talk about the martyr or the nice guy, we could bring that into the traumas of family of origin. And there's a little boy seeking approval that he didn't get from his mother, typically. Okay, I don't like to, create those generalizations, but as a wise man once said, all generalizations are false, including the one I just made. I think it might be most valuable for listeners and viewers to hear my personal story relative to my little boy and how, that resulted many years later in leaving a marriage of 20 years and writing a book called Fixing You Is Killing Me. Well, what does the hero do? He fixes shit. He makes it better. He saves the day. And if he's not getting the results he seeks, it's very easy for him to become the martyr. So in my case, first 2.5 years of my life, deeply connected with my mother, kisses, hugs, tickles, all that giddy stuff that a newborn or emerging toddler would want in terms of attachment needs being met. So we're talking attachment. We know now with the neuroscience that the attachment to the parents, their responsiveness, accessibility, and availability is key for the healthy neurological development of the child into young adulthood. At 2.5, my mom basically had to go back to work. She was a teacher. She was on sabbatical. She was going to lose her job. And, there was a real blessing to that as well, because 10 years later, she was like the main breadwinner when my dad went through some problems. And intuitively, she knew that. There's an ancestral trauma piece there that I'm not going to go into about scarcity and lack of resources. But at 2.5, an attachment wound cut happened for me. So I spent the rest of my childhood, being good, the good boy, because I thought if I was good, then I'd get love. So what's the nice guy? The good boy seeking to get love. And he goes invisible. I went invisible with my needs because when she left, I actually freaked out, like screaming, like gut piercing, hanging onto her leg. She was like dragging me. I mean, it was 1970, Trauma informed would be like, You talk to the child, I'm going back to work. I'm going to call you at noon every day to check it. You know what I mean? Like there's gradual, separation. So anyway, I go into my marriage many years later at the age of 27 and, I end up with a woman who has chronic health issues. Well, that's perfect because I can save the day and fix her and make her better, and then we'll live happily ever after. And I ran with that programming for so long. And so I was a little boy running my marriage. So for men out there, they can ask themselves, I'll often say to guys like, how was your relationship with your parents? Oh, it was great. It was great. It was great. So I asked one simple question, which kind of pierces through that. And it's simply, were you allowed to have emotions as a child that were fully seen, witnessed, and met? And that, 9 times out of 10, it's like, no, no, no. So your needs were not met. So that's the lack of those needs is typically coming into the marriage and the operation of that trauma, that wound, that little boy programming. So if I make you happy, then I can be happy. Well, the thing is now her little girl's getting activated because she's kind of like, where's the emotionally present man? You know how it is if somebody is like reflecting back like, oh, that's great. Oh yeah, I like what you said. Oh yeah, let's go there. Oh yeah. You're like, where's the person? Is there an opinion here? And so she feels like she's in relationship with a ghost. Her little girl gets activated because chances are she had a checked out father. So, but when we do this work successfully, we have the chance to heal together. And often we don't. For those who know, imago, theory or therapy, there's this idea that we come with these unconscious blueprints and they're the perfect partner. So for me, my ex-wife was the perfect wife for me to choose to try to redo the old origin of family of origin wound, to try to heal it. Okay. Now I will say I differ from the therapy model in the sense that I'm not going to lead with that. I'm going to lead with more of like, you show up better, you communicate maturely, you notice when you're getting activated, hooked, and triggered, you get access to your wants and needs. Now you are a solid pole in the polarity of masculine and feminine, or a solid pole in the marriage. And then you see what she does. And you see if she responds better. Now, if she's going to continue, if you've already led her, because as a man, we can lead the relationship. It's a very challenging concept for a lot of guys because women's voices are so loud in relationship. A lot of guys are just like, fuck it, just give her what she wants. This is easier. I don't want to deal with it. But the thing is, when you're in that dynamic and you're grounded in yourself, now you see if she's going to get healthy. And you may have led her and say, sweetie, your complaints alienate me and your complaints make me want to pull away from you. But I would love to hear your requests of me. And your requests will actually be guidance for me on how to be in relationship with you in a way that better meets your needs. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to meet all your requests. I might meet it 30, 40, 50%. I wouldn't say this. I would say this to the client, but I wouldn't have a guy say this to his partner. And that's 30, 40, 50% more than what she was getting before. Now, I do sometimes talk to partners and wives, and I say to her, are you going to focus on the 50, 60, 70% you're not getting? Are you going to just be fucking happy that you're getting 30, 40, 50% more? Water that garden. Applaud him, praise him, let him know what he's doing well. Because men want trust, respect, and connection. Women typically want to be adored, cherished, etc. And I'm speaking to this in reference to whatever the imago unconscious blueprint is, and little boy, little girl, and healing. That's philosophy, and that's great, and it's important to know, or psychology. But if we can say it's like the psychological underpinnings of the dynamics of what's happening, and that's the thing. A lot of guys understand that, but they don't know how to put it into action. So request versus complaints is a very simple way to do that. I want your connection. I don't want your approval. It's another simple way. And it is more meaningful when you know these psychological underpinnings, but it doesn't get you the relationship you want. So what I'll often say is you as a guy are showing up better. You're, dare I say, coaching. Next thing I know, someone's saying, don't mansplain me. You're leading. You're giving her the way that you can be loved. I can be loved by getting requests. I can't be loved by getting complaints. She gets to do the same thing. I can be loved by you listening to me, by you reflecting back what you heard me say, by you holding my, walking with my heart. And I'll often say, if she doesn't start to show improvement or progress, and she ain't willing to do her work with her little girl, eventually you got to decide when it's time to cut ties. And if there's kids involved, I know it's much more complicated, but I often like to say, your kids don't care if you're married or not. They care that you're kind to each other, you're loving, and you're not fighting in front of them. And if it takes being separated or divorced to do that, because, you just can't be in each other's presence, then do that. And there's also many steps. I don't do as much divorce and separation work these days. I'm more on the trying to improve the relationship. But there's so many steps in separation that you can do, such as a healing separation. We're going to take time apart, both go to, a coach or a therapist, do our work, see what our part of, contributing to the unhealthy ecosystem of this relationship is. And then, maybe date once a week and do that for 3 months, 6 months, etc. Anyway, little boy, little girl, it all comes back to, at least in my approach, how are you going to show up at the table in your relationship? Having the mature man lead the relationship so that you, as the man, have the relationship with the little boy, and you don't try to hand over your little boy to her and say, will you be my mommy? Trigger the hell out of a guy to hear that, but unconsciously, that's often happening.
Yeah. I appreciate you laying the groundwork and the framework. I think it's so important for a guy to do the work of knowing his past story, knowing how it impacts him and how it informs how he shows up, and to realize if there's a disconnect or issue in the relationship, it doesn't go away by ignoring it. And I think what you give is very, as I said in the intro about you, directive, concrete steps to address these things. And it's just really a choice. It's simple. Like, do you want the relationship to work and function, or do you not? And if you do, then you'll do it. If you don't, then you won't. And the last thing is, it's so interesting. Many men see maturity as becoming developmentally, psychologically, emotionally, like more mature, older, which is true in a sense, but it often takes, to your framework, going back to the little boy and healing him and integrating him and taking him with you. So I'm really curious if you can walk us through these exercises that address these wounds, these archetypes, these dynamics.
Yeah, let's do a simple fear practice. And I bring in the fear because, a lot of times I'm not going to really, with a client, hang out in that space of the little boy. I'm going to hang out more in the space of what's happening for you. What are your emotions? Fear, anger, joy, sadness. If you can identify, what's going on for you, then you'll have a compass in your relationship. One who has no connection to their emotions has no direction, no compass in the relationship. A lot of guys try to outsource the compass to his partner, which is the, make her happy and you can be happy syndrome. So what's happening with the nice guy, the martyr? And viewers can ask themselves, if you take a breath or two and you go deeper and you notice, well, let's just jump into the practice, Wes. So viewers and listeners can do this as well if you have space. And best to be in a private space where you're not disturbed, kids are not coming in, wife's not gonna, maybe you close your door or something, or whatever you gotta do. And if you're driving, don't close your eyes for more than half a second. So I'm gonna invite you to plant your feet on the ground, Wes, sit straight up. Yeah, it helps to close your eyes to go in. So I'm gonna invite you to take a breath, head, heart, gut, balls, down the front, exhale up the spine and out through the mouth. I'll do it with you. So on the next breath, I'm gonna invite you mind's eye, keeping your breath flowing the same way, mind's eye on the heart. Notice the volume of fear that's inside of you right now, and just take 2 breaths into that. And for some guys, this might be counterintuitive, but just drop into a relational challenge. Maybe that's happening. Maybe you have a fear of rejection in an interaction with your partner or a loved one. Maybe a fear of being alone in this crazy world. Maybe a fear of being screamed at, not loved. Maybe a fear if you're that guy walking on eggshells, if you make one wrong step, you're in the doghouse again and you're not going to get physical touch for a week. So now, as you breathe, Wes, I want you to give a simple number. It's really helpful to quantify the fear, like 1 low, 5 medium, 10 high. And take 2 breaths and just feel into that, what that number is, and then just breathe into that number. Listeners and viewers can give it a number as well. And so when you're ready, Wes, just say the number.
6.
Great. Take a breath into that 6 together again. And this is incorporating the body. So that's why I said head, heart, gut, balls, because Fear lives in your bones, your cells, your chest, your shoulders. So we're going to do a little what's called voice dialogue with the fear. Fear is about safety. So the question to the fear is, fear, what are you trying to keep me safe from? Take a breath or two, stay with that and see what comes up. And if that question doesn't resonate, you can just tell us what the fear is about as well.
The fear for me is keeping me safe from the disappointment of being let down, expectations not being met, the unpredictability of what I would need to do if they weren't met, and how I would respond if I could respond adequately. And then lastly, this fear of abandonment, rejection of my sense of worth. Like, what would it say about me as a person and my value if my expectations aren't met? If I am disappointed by, someone I love and trust who does claim and genuinely does love and care for me.
And is that relative to someone specific? Fear of
Yes,
disappointment.
my wife, yeah.
Great. Yeah, cool. Thanks for sharing that. So I hear disappointment, abandonment, rejection, and uncertainty. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if it's helpful to you, see if you can sum it up in a sentence or two, because you got into a lot of story there, which is great. We want to hear the story, but it's going to be easier for your system to do this work with a sentence or two.
I fear being let down and blindsided with a lack of care in a way that would make me feel unworthy and untrusting of my wife.
Is it essentially a fear of losing your wife if you don't perform properly, or if you're not the guy she needs you to be at some level?
I would say it's the opposite. So I play this martyr role a lot in our relationship, and often, like, if she doesn't do the task that around the house, let's say, that bring me like peace or kind of like this sense of certainty, or I feel like we're on different expectation levels in like fulfilling duties, or if I don't feel like she initiates going out of her way to care for me, etc. I almost have this anxiety,
Okay.
this fear, unsettledness that, like, oh, I'm not being cared for. Now I have to jump in and do it. I wasn't expecting to do it.
Gotcha. I'll give it another shot here. Is it like the fear of not being loved in the way that you seek?
Yeah, I think that's a
Even
fair
if that covers 70,
assessment.
80%, it's just for the sake of this.
Yeah, and cared for, yeah.
Yeah. So then we get to say, fear, I see that you're trying to keep me safe from being loved in the way that I seek. Okay. And if you want to shift those words a tiny bit that are more your words, you get to do that. But if that works for now, we'll just roll with that. Fear, I see that you're trying to keep me safe from not being loved in the way that I seek. Is there something you want me to do about that? Take a few breaths and see what the fear says. Notice if you're spinning in your head or if you're connected to your heart and the fear.
Yeah, I'm hearing this invitation to let go and this realization of just how damn exhausting it is trying to micromanage and hold on and grip so tightly the processes and the predictions and the ways that things happen in my marriage. And I won't get us off track here, but I think it's maybe helpful and more accurate too to add another layer. So my in-laws watch my son, and in general, there's a form of care there that I'm experiencing a very similar fear and anxiety of how that plays out. And essentially it boils down to what you're saying, which is the fear is protecting me from the disappointment and hurt of not being loved in the way that I think I need or that I want.
Yeah. So if I got it right, the fear is saying, like, let go a little bit. Don't take on so much as a burden.
Yeah.
Allow yourself to be you. See if that resonates. Let go a little bit. That's what I need you to do. Is to not on so much emotionally, psychologically. In essence, to not carry me with you, me being fear.
Yeah, that resonates, this deep sense of unnecessary burden and tension that I bring into, often conflicts with my wife. She'll say, like, why are you so tense? Like, we're just talking about, something fairly objective, right? And I tend to personalize it, and just in general. And then in my head, it's the same thing when certain actions happen by those around me. I tend to immediately see it as a a threat, a burden. It just, yeah, I have that sense that you reflected to me that I need to let go of the fear within those scenarios.
Well, in essence, I didn't reflect that back to you. I believe I was an interpreter, and fear reflected that back to you. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, we'll go with that.
Yeah, yeah. So in response to the question of what action do I need to take to fear to, in response to the fear of trying to be safe from not being loved in the way that I seek, fear said, let go, create more space inside, essentially. Like, don't hold it so heavily. So now we get to say to fear, did we get that right? Did we hear
Yeah.
it?
Yes.
Great. So now I want you to take a breath or two and just notice if are you able to release a little bit, or how is it for you to hear fear saying what it says? Make space for the unknown. Relax a little bit.
Yeah, my sense of it is that the situation doesn't change, that it's actually predictable, it's trustworthy, but I'm misinterpreting it through the fear and scarcity. And when you just invited me to hear what the fear was inviting me into, and to really believe or emulate, I did feel more relaxed, and I felt like, oh my goodness, like I can trust the reality that I've been rejecting in a sense.
Yeah. You can put down the burden. Notice the volume level on fear now, 1 through 10. Give it a number.
3.
So, look at that. 50% reduction in fear. So that's essentially the opening of space, because the definition of stress is not enough space, overwhelm. Now that there's more space, you have the actual ability to be more in relationship with what's in the room with your wife, instead of having all that space filled by this fear of not getting the love you seek. And you know what? When there's more space to get the love you seek, you're more likely to get it and step out of your way. Yeah. So just want you to take a few breaths, head, heart, gut, balls. Just integrate this teaching into your system. One more. You ready? Head, heart, gut, balls. Now go down to the feet, to the earth below you. And then earth, feet, heart, head, sky. Just a simple earth, sky breath. And then this step is if you believe in a higher power, a God, a great mystery, you just invite them in and know that this is divine guidance based on your little boy, your attachment wounds, your nice guy, your martyr, whatever's showing up for you. You have this wisdom inside of yourself, but it is connected to this divine growth and expansion that I believe we're all here to do if we have the courage to do it. And that's why I often say that this type of work is the deepest warrior work for a man, because it's where he hits the places he fears the most. So take your time. If you need a few more breaths, in a moment you can open your eyes and we can just debrief.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, take your time. I know you have to be a podcaster and run the show. And at the same time, I felt like something shifted. And I will say, as a debrief, that was a really unique process, because in some ways it was fear saying, it was almost circular. It was fear saying, like, I want you to stop being so afraid of me. Or like saying, like, I want you to stop handing over the steering wheel of your relationship to me. You grab the wheel. I need an inner leader. I'll go in row 3 or 4, but I need to trust that there's a solid leader in this inner system. We call that a sovereign. Okay. A king, an inner king. An inner king has his emotions serving the vision of what he wants to create in his life. And I hear that part of what you want to create in your life is a life in which you get the love you seek. And so it was a little bit more of a complicated scenario relative to, it wasn't just like fear saying, I'm afraid I'm going to let her down, or afraid I won't be enough for her. It was a little bit more nuanced and more there. And that's what this practice is about, to transform what is an enemy when it's unconscious into an ally when it's conscious, which is predicated on the philosophical underpinning of Carl Jung, who said, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will rule our lives and we will call it fate. But what I love about the practice, it doesn't just give us the cognitive knowledge of consciousness. It actually has us breathing it into our body, our cells. And I know we were going to talk a little bit more about the next levels. Level 2 is the inner child, which actually we spoke explicitly about. I feel like in some ways we covered that, but I could lead a man into a voice dialogue with the child the way we just did with the fear. And then eventually it takes the child a little bit of time to trust. Who the hell is this guy? He hasn't shown up. You're 45, and it's like, well, I'm getting it now. I need to. It's going to take time. But level 3 that I want to speak to, which we could have dropped into and I chose not to, was that somatic. Where's the fear in the body? Because that's what's driving the nice guy and the martyr on the symptomatic top level, the behaviors. When fear is taking up space in the body, we're trying to get rid of it, trying to quote, exercise it. And there's a way in which what we did, we're in a practice. And so then the work for you, if you were my client, okay, what can you do? We collaborate here. Can you do 5 times a day? You go talk to your fear for 10 minutes. You set a timer, or 5 times a week. 5 times a day would be brutal. 5 times a week, or maybe 3 times, you decide. And now he's going to do that practice. So it's integration, because I want to help a man not be in therapy for years. And I have had clients say, I went to therapy for years. I got a great, or 6 months or 3 months, I got a bunch of great information. I didn't know what to do with it. So essentially I stuck it in a box and put it under my bed. So, this is a practice. And I say, do the practice with fear on the training ground. If we think of baseball, the off season, the training. And now when you're live in the game and she's triggering that shit, pause, breath. Okay, fear, what's going on? Fear not being loved the way. Now I can be in the room with that 3 instead of the 6. And again, you're not going to get there in 10 seconds in front of your partner until you've done the practice 3 to 5 times a week for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or however long that is. But I see massive improvement really quickly with guys, precisely because it is so embodied. But what I want to speak to on the 3rd level is that somatic, because eventually we don't need to go into this. Who the fuck cares about the story? All I know is fear's on my chest, and I need to be with it and be with it and be with it. Because fear, anger, sadness, they're hard emotions, and they show up as inner children, essentially. And just like children, they want attention. So we engage our fear. What's the memo? What's the message? And it relaxes 90% of the time, 95. So again, those 3 levels. 1 is the story, which is the voice dialogue work that we did. 2 is the underpinnings of the inner child work. 3 is the somatic. And in the somatic, you're getting to the body. And there's a training I did with this organization called ISTA, and they talk about the horse and the rider. And so when I'm in the body, actually now, I'm in a place that I'm shaking off that fear, and I'm really feeling it, and I'm getting it down to my legs, and, get a little bit in connection with the wild man, because guys engage the physical typically in the gym, but it's so mission focused. It's so check task, but it's a totally different thing. If I'm like, yeah, I'm going to move with my fear, I don't care about the story anymore. So that's another level. And, some guys I coach won't go to that level. They're getting good behavioral modification. They're showing up solid, and it's working for them. And I'm cool. I'll meet a guy wherever he's at. I'm not one of these, you got to be spiritual or evolve to a certain level, blah, blah, blah. You get to choose, So again, I wanted to mention those 3 levels because I know that was part of what we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And the exercise was very helpful. And I think what I appreciated about it was, I talk about this in my therapy work, and I myself, of course, as a regular human, just like my clients, can get into this dynamic of essentially the story versus the script, and the script, just what you're told, what you know on paper, informationally, cerebrally, and yet the story is the embodied, lived experience, and you help me reinvigorate my relationship with the fear. In those moments where I lose it, I kind of panic, I try to micromanage, or I judge, or, make that little passive comment to my wife. In my head, I cerebrally know, all right, you're freaking out, you're anxious, you don't feel like you're going to get cared for, right? But what you kind of help me tap into is this embodied sense. And I think the emotion is so important because, you mentioned this earlier, if a guy doesn't have the emotional awareness, he doesn't have a true north, essentially. How can you make decisions? And that stuff's true. There's another layer that is being somatically and embodily tuned in to the emotion that also, if you don't do that, creates a massive compromise within yourself and your relationship. And I feel like you help me tune back into that fear on that level. And I appreciate that. And, on that, I'd be curious to hear your take on this. With the nice guy syndrome, what can often happen is the aggression is suppressed and then usually comes out, in my experience personally, and working with clients, in passive
Yeah.
aggressiveness.
So you talk about like the nice guy bottles up so much and then he blows.
Yes, this suppression, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
analogy I use is essentially like a floaty in a pool. Like if you keep pushing it down, like it's going to sporadically pop up instead of learning to like
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
control, like get on it. But essentially, there's these kind of like random outbursts that happen. I'll just speak for myself, where it can kind of be this more docile, like chill, everything's okay. And then it's like, what the hell did that come from, right?
And
And I think
she's like,
when,
who the fuck are you? Can I trust
yeah,
you? What have you been
exactly
hiding?
that, and like chill out. Like now you're dysregulating me. Now you're creating more burdens and tension that's
Yeah.
not necessary in our conflict. We can't just talk to the conflict both regulated. And I think what that comes down to is this crucial distinction that you've made between assertiveness and aggression, which I'm totally on board with. I'm curious, how can men learn to be assertive without crossing into that aggressive territory, especially when they've been
Yeah.
conditioned to be nice guys?
Perfect segue, because the second emotion that I lead men in the practice is anger.
There we go.
So let me see if because I can do it real fast. I'll just narrate it. So the question is, anger, what are you trying to protect me from? Okay, now they're subtle. Fear is about safety. Anger is more like, it's more active. It's more like protect, sometimes I'll say it's more offense than defense, anger often. Okay. So if I go into, what are you trying to protect me from? Oh yeah, I'm trying to protect you from being walked on by her again. Okay, great. What do you want me to do about being walked on? Yeah, I want you to speak up for what you want. Okay, boom, assertion. Well, how do I do that? Well, that's your freaking job to figure out, man. Go get a coach. But I'll go into, while I'll do deeper somatic work with guys, I'll also go into, hey, here's 4 steps. What I noticed is you told me I'm not enough for you. It made me feel angry. What I'd like instead is to be seen and honored and given specifics instead of character assassinations of I'm not enough for you. If there's something you don't think I did properly, then tell me about it and I'll listen. That's my assertion now. And there's another step in what I just outlined is the story I tell myself is that I'm not good enough for you. So now there's not just anger, there's sadness. We often say anger is a top emotion, sadness is underneath. Which is true 90% of the time. So you want to do your anger work, get to your sadness as well. That'll soften you into assertion instead of aggression. 10% of the time, anger is autonomy based, like, no, I need to be individuated here. Or, yeah, you want to play basketball in my driveway? There's no sadness there. There's clear autonomy. That's fine, but send me a text and let me know, like a neighbor or something. So yeah, anger, we would go into that practice with anger. What are you trying to protect me from? And then we'll get to the assertion. Now we also need to look at what are the little boy dynamics that freak out a man to go assert himself. I just created a video. It's fresh on my YouTube channel called "How to Finally Get Through to Your Woman." Because I often talk about how she has such a huge voice and women were voiceless for, I don't know, whatever, 1,000 years. They needed a man to co-sign for a credit card until 1973. And she was raised by a woman who maybe didn't have a voice. So now she's inherited that. So in response, her voice is so freaking loud that you're just like, whoa, is there space for me here? Can I assert myself? Yes. And so guiding a man to step into that assertion. And actually just doing this work with a client the other day with his son. Powerful thing for a father to say to a son. And I actually remember doing this with my 10-year-old when he said, I hate you. And he slammed the door. And I was like, damn, little fucker. So I went and cooled off, knock on the door. He won't open. Just wait. Eventually I say, hey, there was an impact there. You're powerful. And you're powerful because I love you deeply. And when you said those words, I felt really sad, felt hurt. And I'm not touting myself, but I was strong enough to stand in the fire and be vulnerable with him and know that if he tried to manipulate me for that or be disrespectful or say something, I would hold a healthy boundary. Like, actually, when you talk to me that way, I can't let you in. I don't want to live like that with you, son. I'm your father. I want to share my love with you freely. So would you consider how you can act differently next time to not have me want to pull away? So conveying impact is another powerful tool. But I mentioned that piece with a child because I was asserting myself. I need to instead of just saying, you'll speak to me respectfully, you won't disrespect me, you little shit. It was more like, here's how you can love me better, son. And here's how I can. And so it was awesome to have that experience with a client recently to help him understand that. And I think he came from a background of like, no fucking way, I'm letting that little shit, get under my skin. Well, you did already, so good luck.
Yeah. The one thing it brings up in me, it seems like there's a more reciprocal nature to the relationship where aggression says like, I'm here, you're there, and like, I'm going to use power to dominate you and to overcome you, to control you, overwhelm you. And yet
And that
when
works
you're,
great with women.
yeah, exactly. Then the assertiveness is this really radical reciprocity that says like, I'm going to honor the equality in our relationship by using that power not to go over, but to meet and actually go towards and to have this connection. And even with your son, I mean, my boy's only 17 months, but you've given me a good script and I'm sure saved us both years of therapy by changing the way that we interact to realize that, and I think many men struggle with this, is just because we let go of how the power is expressed in a way where we're not fully in control doesn't mean we're losing, doesn't mean we're not seen, doesn't mean we're not going to get what we need. It's in that radical act of trust of the letting go and actually of the but yet holding on, like you were saying, I really appreciate how in this example you, like you said, held your ground, and it's this kind of calm, secure sense of self. Like, I'm here. I'm not going to shy away.
In my control of myself, which because I'm connected to my emotions, and because of that, I don't need to be in control of the interaction. I can just know my inner king power to influence the interaction, to do, as you said, here's an invitation into relationship to be in power with me versus over me or under me.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think this would be a really helpful and good place to end, is this dichotomy you describe of men feeling, as you mentioned this earlier, capable to really perform at work, at the gym, and the physical challenges, but they're failing at home in the dis and the deep intimacy zone where wounds become the primary experience. So what's happening there? It seems like that's also correlated a bit to what we just talked about, but yeah.
So just to make sure you're asking what's happening in that deep intimacy zone?
Yeah, essentially, so maybe it would be helpful to know how some signs a guy can pay attention to that he's there.
Oh, just simple. Here. You're getting hooked. You're getting triggered. The heat's rising. Your fear is at an 8-9. But that just giving it a number is so helpful, especially for the native inherent cognitive strength that most men have. So I can name it. That's a cognitive function. I can tame it. I know it's at an 8-9. I need to get out of there because I'm losing my shit. I'm going to go step aside, take a pause and a breath so I don't say something I regret. I'll be back. Very concrete to integrate behavioral modifications with the deeper underpinnings of all that other stuff we talked about, the core wounds, the inner child, yada, yada, yada. But yeah, the ability to quantify, even if you're the guy who hits, you're just able to give it a number. I like to say you're on the trail. The trailhead sign's there. Like the first step is pause. Second is breathe. Second is notice anger, fear, joy, sadness. Give it a number, etc. But I also do the practice, the practice with sadness, and I reframe it to the depth of the sadness is the depth of the love. Because you don't get sad about things you don't care about. Or sometimes I'll say the depth of the care. If it's a professional situation, you care, it matters. This is your financial livelihood. Because you don't get sad about things you don't care about, people you don't really love. And then the joy practice, which is actually the inverse to the fear, is simple. Like it's a simple mantra of like flexing the muscle of joy. May I be worthy of my joy. Exhale in the root of my joy. I might do that 5 times. But we notice as the joy goes up, the fear goes down. As the fear goes up, the joy goes down. And joy is I often say that it's the hardest emotion for a man to embrace because it requires surrender. And if you get too joyful, it requires trust. you got to have a solid foundation of safety to fully let joy in. The type of joy that has you looking like a fool. The type of joy that might even make you a little feminine looking on the dance floor or whatever. But that is energy, that's aliveness, and that's exciting to a partner as well. And we can go into a conversation on tantra and sexuality. I mean, but that's for another show.
Yeah. No, I agree with that last part. And just to bring it back to where we started, in a sense, every boy has joy, and that emotion tends to be a primary one they express. And it's usually about that middle school timeline when they are in competition with other guys. For girls, the testosterone starts changing, the emotional bond with other men or boys start to shift. And I think, to your point, and it kind of again integrates it, is the more you can ask yourself, well, how joyful am I throughout my day?
Yeah, give it a number, 1 to 10.
Yeah.
Oh, it's out
And
of
just
2. I need to
getting a
do the
sense.
practice, the affirmation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not a
So
big
it's so
fan of
good.
affirmations, to be honest. They usually are a spiritual bypass, in my opinion.
I
But
agree.
with joy, it
Yeah.
can be powerful. Like we have to feed the joy, like flex it in a muscle. I often say to guys, like, yeah, doing the practice like going to the gym. You gotta build the muscles, the joy muscles, the fear resilience muscles, the anger assertion muscle, whatever it is.
Yeah. So Stuart, so much good wisdom and practice and insight. And I appreciate you being willing to do that with me personally, and also leave viewers with some takeaways. And I'm curious where people can find your work.
Yeah, absolutely. Pleasure to be here, Wes. Pleasure to talk about these things. As you can tell, I'm quite passionate about it. StuartMotola.com, StuartMotola. Simplest place. I run a men's call every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. It's a great small tribe of guys. If people are interested in that, and again, otherwise, talking with guys one-on-one. YouTube's a great place. I got about 200 plus videos on YouTube. Same, and Stuart Motola. You can check out there, and those are the two primary places. And typically, it's helpful for guys to watch a bunch of my videos first. And I'm talking about all these topics that we've been talking about here on that channel. So great to be with you again, and thank you for having me.
Yes. Thank you for giving these really helpful resources for free, make them accessible. And it's something we'll make sure to put everything in the show notes. And guys, until next time.
Great. Thanks so much, Wes. Have a great day.